Hey everyone, welcome to my presentation. My name is Natasha Tsolakis and I will be presenting on loss of cultural identity. Now I know that we did see this from Teppa last week. I've tried to make it a little bit different just so we're not having a look at the same content, but we'll see how we go. So first, I just want to define what is culture. So Cambridge Dictionary says that culture is the way of life, especially the general customs and beliefs of a particular person, people, or people at a particular time. Livescience.com says that culture is the characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people, encompassing language, religion, cuisine, social habits, music, and arts. Pretty straightforward, hey? So when we're trying to define what culture is, it really is just about food and traditions and community and marriage and all of these different things in how our particular cultural group views and sees the world. So if we're having a look at the cultural wheel up here, basically it just goes through and it says that culture is the greater community. It is knowledge and stories. It is language, traditions and rituals, technologies and skills, tools and objects, the arts. So we all have different ways that we listen to music and view art, food and drink, and of course values that we uphold. So anthropologist Christina D. Rossi believes that culture encompasses religion, food, what we wear, how we wear it, our language, marriage, music, what we believe is right or wrong, how we sit at a table, how we greet visitors, how we behave with loved ones, and she's right, a million other things. So even though it can be quite easy to define culture, there are so many things that go into one's culture. So if we're having a look at Aboriginal culture, now I've tried to summarize, because like I said, culture, there are so many things that go into culture. But when we're having a look at the Aboriginal culture, the essential features of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures include their special connection to the land, which we know is super important, commitment to family and community, and of course, dream time. Now, when researching this topic, I actually had no idea that more than 250 Indigenous Australian languages, including 800 dialectal varieties, were spoken on the continent at the time of the European settlement in 1788. Only 13 traditional Indigenous languages are still acquired by children, and approximately another 100 or so are spoken to various degrees by older generations, with many of these languages, of course, at risk as elders pass away. Now, we have a look at language and we ask, why is language so important? Why is it important? I feel like it shapes our identity, it shapes our cultural knowledge, our belonging, our empowerment, meaning, and it definitely gives us purpose. Now, according to the Australian Institute of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies, language is one example of Aboriginal culture that was lost. It is more than just a means to communicate. It is an essential characteristic that makes people and communities unique. And it does play a central role in a sense of identity. So language also carries meaning beyond the words themselves and is an important platform within which much cultural knowledge and heritage is passed on. I even know myself, I'm half Greek, half Serbian. I went to Greece last year, and I don't speak fluent Greek, but I have been around my grandparents my whole life. I spent a lot of time with them when I was little, when both my parents were working, and just hearing and listening to them speak Greek, I grew up thinking, wow, I have belonging and this sense of identity. I kind of know my culture, I know my background. I have these people speaking in the background, and I'm like, yeah, I'm Greek. This is awesome. And like I said, when I went to Greece last year, for me, even just to say tikanis or kalaso, hello, how are you? And I say, yes, I'm good. I was like, yeah, I'm speaking another language. I'm speaking my own language. I'm proud of that, you know? Or just listening to my cousin speaking Greek, I could pick up little words here and there. And even though I can't speak fluently, I thought, wow, this is really cool. I feel like I belong to somewhere, you know? So maybe just have a think about how you would feel if you grew up knowing that you were Aboriginal or Greek or Lebanese, or you knew this, but you've never been exposed to anything, you've never heard anyone speak to you, you feel a little bit lost. And that's how the Aboriginals felt and feel now still to this day. So there are actually people alive today who are forcibly removed from their parents under government policy, who were separated from their children, who were banned in towns after 6 p.m, who were not allowed to be in public areas without permission, who were barred from schools and hospitals, who were forced to work in the homes of non-Indigenous people and had their earnings permanently withheld by the government. So when we're talking about this, we're talking about intergenerational trauma. What are the impacts of this loss of culture? What are the implications of this loss of culture? Now, AustraliansTogether.org says that trauma caused by colonization, including violence and loss of culture and land, as well as policies such as the forced removal of children, is often passed from generation to generation in families and communities with devastating effects. That basically summarizes what intergenerational trauma is. Now, from this, I am sure you would all agree how important it is to know and understand your own culture, because it gives us purpose and identity. Now, language is just one example of what the Aboriginals lost due to the invasion and carried on through a domino effect. And then we hit the stolen generation, which we will touch base on in the next slide. But a lot of people may ask, why don't they just get over it? Like, it's been so long. They should just move on. The reason why this would be hard is due to the repercussions this had on Australia as a country. You know, Indigenous people who haven't directly experienced the events or policies of our history are often still impacted by the legacy that has been left behind. Now we're going to have a look at some statistics. So far we have spoken about how Aboriginal people feel about the culture they have lost and the implications of these. So loss of meaning, purpose and identity. And I know I keep going back to those same words, but it is really important that we understand that because they've lost their language, because they went through all these traumatic events, of course these three words are going to come up. And I am sure that we're all familiar with the stolen generation. So this is one example of a trauma-based event that has had everlasting effects on Aboriginal culture and loss of identity. So in our slide earlier, we spoke about intergenerational trauma and the fact that there are still Indigenous people alive today that have gone through traumatic events. So if we have a look at some statistics, there is a 50% chance that the members of the stolen generation and their family are more likely to be charged by the police. We'll dive into this a little bit more in the next slide. There is 15% chance that these people affected by the stolen generation are likely to consume alcohol at risky levels. There is a 30% chance that they are less likely to report that they're in good health, and 10% chance that they are less likely to be employed. Now, we're going to dive into each of these things, okay? So, implications. What are the implications? We've got relationships that have been impacted. Personal, so how they feel about themselves. Economic, law and justice. Health, spiritual, and cultural. Now, if we're having a look at relationships, okay, so a lot of them have felt that they are unable to bond with their family, okay? So when most of them are reunited with a parent after many years, sometimes even decades of not seeing them, the reunion turns into another perceived hurt and rejection when they cannot find that bond with their parent, okay? They are strangers to their family and they have difficulties parenting because nobody showed them how to do this. So due to this, they're unable to manage their own relationships. Personal. Now, low self-esteem, loss of identity, violence, which can be domestic or intrinsic, leading to suicide. Mothers of the stolen generations living in remote areas, okay, are 3 times more likely to experience violence than other Aboriginal mothers. They stay longer in violent relationships because they cannot bear their families being broken up again and their children growing up without a mother or a father. Economic. So they had poorer education. Because they were brought up to be servants or labourers, members of the stolen generations often received a poorer education and are more likely to be unemployed because of this. Law and justice. Legal problems, of course, criminal offences. So there was a study found that 80% of Aboriginal prisoners in New South Wales were affected by the removal policies. That just blows my mind. Health. Not visiting medical services. So substance and alcohol abuse, depression, and of course intergenerational trauma and abuse. Spiritual. Difficulties of finding their religious beliefs because language was something that was lost to them. They probably don't know about the dream time, or they do, but they haven't, no one has been there to teach them these things. There are no elders that they're aware of. So spiritually, yes, they are, it's just not there with them, or they haven't been exposed to it. And cultural. So loss of language, like we touched base on, loss of cultural affiliation, since they were often denied any traditional knowledge. And that's the thing. With all of these circumstances, they were denied any traditional knowledge. So many stolen generation members find it difficult to take a role in the cultural and spiritual life of their Aboriginal communities. And of course, their loss of land, which is a huge thing for the Aboriginal people. Now, we are going to watch a short clip. I know that you are all aware of this lovely man from the first or second tutorial that we did, but I just thought hearing from him would give a chance to stop hearing from me. It just basically summarizes everything I said, and it's nice to hear a little spiel from him. We won't watch the whole thing though, because we're out of time. Just bear with me as it loads.
You were here at Multichula, right beside Uluru, would be home of my ancestors, and it was in that area there, for Tempe Downs, where I came out, and that's why the police were brought in, and that's how I was taken at that time by a police officer. But I was been, that's like so many kids who can now refer to as the stolen generation. But of course, bush living was bush. You totally took no fear on the land you're on. We just lived on the land as people of the land. To us, it is a natural way of being part of all that there is. That's just the way you was. You didn't see anything any different from you. It was just a way of life that was inclusive of all that there is through life. Life is the binding and the connecting way the oneness is. If you're alive, you connect to everything else that is alive. But that oneness included everything that was around us, and you raised with that teaching from a child upwards. The relationship, and our relationship system for our people here. See, my people see land ownership as being totally different to the English way of ownership, because ours used to be really the land owns us, and it still is that to us. The land that grows all of us up, and it really does. No human is older than the land itself. It just isn't. But no living martial is as old as the land itself.
We'll just stop it there because we will run out of time if we watch the whole thing. I like how he says, the land owns us. The land grows all of us up. The land owns us. That just really summarizes everything that we've been talking about the whole time. Sorry, having a little bit of a technical difficulty. I'm just going to go through some testimonials from having a look at going back to the implications that we looked at. So, relationships. Elaine Randall has said, too much water had passed under the bridge. We became mother and daughter years too late, so unable to build that bond. Glendra Stubbs says, we kept coming across a pattern of stolen generation members whose children, then grandchildren, and even their great-grandchildren had ended up in care. Personal. So Bill Simon, he recounts the first time he tasted alcohol and how that and later on harder drugs worked to numb him of the blinding rage and violence he felt. Cultural. Iris Clayton. I can remember when I was 16 and a big group of Aboriginals were walking towards me and I was terrified. I was green as grass. You had no knowledge of the outside world. All you was taught was housekeeping. Moving forward, I am going to talk to you quickly about a couple of organisations that are helping build relationships and keeping the future generations connected to their culture and their heritage. So, ABSEC, Aboriginal Child, Family and Community Care Stage Secretariat. So ABSEC is a company that focuses on ensuring Aboriginal children remain at home with their families wherever possible. They believe that early intervention and holistic family support should always be the first port of call where this fails to ensure the child's protection. Kinship care is the next best option, as it provides an environment where children can grow up with people they are close to in a community and culture that is familiar to them. ABSEC believes that it is important that out-of-home care agencies support Aboriginal children to remain connected to their birth families and communities, as these vital connections inform their sense of identity and belonging. ABSEC is doing an amazing job. They work to support these agencies to meet the needs of our children and families across New South Wales. Amazing work. And then we've also got another example is the Dunghutti language group. So in recent Australian history, up until the 1970s, Aboriginal people were prohibited from speaking their language. So this is Caroline Bradshaw. She is a Dunghutti elder and one of the 3 remaining members of the Dunghutti language group. Okay, so the group was set up by a passionate group of Dunghutti elders entrusted with holding and teaching their language, but many of the elders have now died, which is sad, but they're trying to keep that language going. The Dunghutti elders have been teaching their language at local preschools, primary and high schools in an effort to revitalise the Dunghutti language and bring it into everyday use for the younger members of the Dunghutti community. And these are 2 great organisations that are working together to keep children connected to their heritage, connected to their identity, connected to their culture. And I really take my hat off to them. Like this is awesome things that are happening. We have run out of time. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that it wasn't information that you've kind of heard before. I did try my best. But yeah, take care and have a really good day.